Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Game On, exclusive to 𝐾𝐿 TV. I'm James Preston, and in this episode, the US Open has thrown up a number of surprises, and we'll touch on each of them with tennis commentator Brett Phillips. Nine scores a big broadcast deal that we'll explore in sports business, but let's begin with sports news. Well, beginning with touch football, and the New South Wales Touch Association has made the difficult decision to cancel the 2021 Country Championships. Whilst the New South Wales Government has announced that a range of restrictions will be eased at a 70% vaccination rate, it's made no mention surrounding the return to community sport. It's believed the 70% mark will be reached by October 18, whilst the Country Championships are scheduled for October 16 and 17. Even with a slight postponement, it's believed there would be insufficient allowances for training to resume in order for players to reach an appropriate level of match fitness, and with significant travel required for the tournament and various regional areas remaining in lockdown, a definitive decision would present a logistical nightmare for organisers. New South Wales Touch has instead turned their attention to the 2022 Country Championships and is currently working with the Central Coast Council on an appropriate date. At this stage, it's believed the Junior and Senior State Championships will still go ahead. Now, touch football isn't the only sport feeling the brunt of the New South Wales Government's lack of clarity surrounding community sport. Cricket New South Wales has now organised a committee to deal with New South Wales Health and the state government in trying to ensure a return for the sport. Initial discussions around a no jab, no play policy have been floated, which raises further issues around informed consent, bodily autonomy and associated ethical issues. It also gives rise to issues about access equality. Whilst the state itself might well be on track to reach 70 and 80% milestones in the coming months, which would align with the cricket season, albeit with a slight delay, the redirection of vaccines from regional areas to the likes of Greater Sydney could have a huge impact on competitions in the likes of the Southern Tablelands, Northern Rivers and the Mid-North Coast if the no jab, no play edict is enforced. This in turn would increase tensions between citizens and government, tensions which are already at fever pitch. Let's now turn our attention to rugby union and citizenship. Now, we don't often talk about those two issues hand in hand, but the mastery of Quade Cooper has forced an unlikely combination. 33-year-old Cooper, who received a surprise recall for Australia against South Africa over the weekend, put on a masterclass with 23 individual points, including a match-winning penalty goal to secure the Wallabies a 28-26 win over the Springboks. But more than just a Man of the Match award, Cooper's long-standing battle to attain Australian citizenship now seems to have taken a positive turn. Alex Hawke, the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship, Migrant Services and Multicultural Affairs, on Tuesday announced that the federal government would begin to streamline the pathway to citizenship for some of the, quote, most talented prospective Australians. Hawke stated that Australian citizenship is a rare privilege and it should not come easy. Those who apply must meet a range of character values and language requirements. They must also have lived in Australia for a minimum period to be eligible. Cooper had previously aired his grievances about the protracted process of obtaining citizenship, posting about his issues on social media back in July. Alex Hawke further commented that exceptional people must not be prevented from becoming Australians because of the unique demands of the very work they do that makes them exceptional, which subtly hinted at Cooper's concerns in particular. It's likely Cooper's citizenship process will now be sped up. From the egg-shaped ball to the round-shaped ball, and this is a rather bizarre story. How would you like to be paid simply for not being a pain in the backside? Well, that's the scenario for Brazilian footballer Neymar, who reportedly receives over £5 million a year by avoiding any political or religious propaganda that could tarnish the image of Paris Saint-Germain. Now, breaking down the ethical clause, as it's being called, a bit further, if the 29-year-old's behaviour is courteous, punctual, friendly and available to fans, he receives an additional £461,947 each month. That's in addition to his insane £490,000 a week salary of the Qatari-owned club. Now, unsurprisingly, there was plenty of negative feedback on social media from fans. After all, how would you feel if you found out someone was only being nice to you for extra money? Wait, isn't that the plot of 10 Things I Hate About You? Or maybe She's All That? The mindset of literally every goal ticker? Well, at least we have ammunition for a screenplay if he does break that clause though. coming this summer. Neymar, Mr. Nice Guy. Time now for a quick break, and in just a moment, we'll talk tennis with Brett Phillips. Has your week hit you for six? Barely had time to breathe, let alone throw a flick pass? Well, don't worry, 𝐊𝐴 has all your sporting action covered. Each episode, I'll bring you the biggest sports news of the week. Exclusive interviews with athletes, sports commentators, and journalists. Plus, we'll also look at the finances off the field from new broadcast deals, sports commercial partnerships, and more with sports business. So for a sports show that tackles all the big issues, ball and all, join me, James Preston, for Game On every Friday, exclusive to 𝐊𝐴 TV. Welcome back to Game On. The US Open has now been run and won, and there are plenty of incredible stories from it. And there's no one better to tell them than tennis commentator Brett Phillips. Brett Phillips, once again, welcome to Game On.
Thank you, James.
And Brett, what an incredible end to the US Open. So many stories from it. Let's start with one that you picked, though, the sheer unpredictability of the women's draw, and it's led to a new champion.
Incredible. Well, not quite the champion we thought, but I mean, there is a trend, and it's been happening for a while. You know, new finalists, semi-finalists, quarterfinalists, new winners. So the women's game is unpredictable. I think it's really exciting. You've got to wonder what Serena Williams is actually sitting there thinking about now. You know, does she try and come back and play one more major, potentially turning 40 and looking at all this young talent emerging, going, can I still actually win as good as my career has been? Emma Raducanu, I mean, it's a phenomenal story. We're all still shaking our head. For any of us that know something about tennis, we didn't have her in the calculations at all. Certainly we knew that, you know, she had that moment at Wimbledon, or a few moments, getting through to the fourth round, so we knew her name. But to back it up at the next major and to come through qualifying, extraordinary. But look, her game really has developed, particularly the forehand side, where she used that to great effect. And from all reports, she's just matured beautifully off court. I mean, anytime there was a microphone in front of her across the last 2 weeks, she was eloquent, she was savvy, you know, just hit the mark. So her life changes forever now.
We've mentioned there what she's like away from the court as well. Now, there has been a lot of commentary around Emma's incredible future off court. She dazzled at the Met Gala during the week, and there's now been plenty of people who are suggesting she could well be one of the most marketable athletes in the world moving forward. What do you think about those claims?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, brands, companies, they love jumping on a winner. So she's got a beautiful smile. I mean, she's engaging. Her tennis was superb. I think Chris Evert, for me, summed it up last weekend, the 18-time major champion, James, when she said, I just hope she can enjoy being a teenager still. And that's going to come down to her team around her. Okay, Emma, look, there's lots of interest for you. There's demands left, right and centre. Can you appear here? Can you appear there? They've got to be very selective. They've got to sit down and think, okay, this is the strategy now, because I'm not just a run-of-the-mill ITF player. I'm now a Grand Slam champion. It's a target on my back. And at the end of the day, the thing she's got to control is her tennis. Her tennis is what has got her to this bigger stage. So she's got to knuckle down again and get to the next big tournaments and try and replicate what she's achieved. Well, she's gone from 338 to 23 in the world, so now she is a star on the tour. She's extremely marketable. There's no doubt she can set herself up long term, but the balance between on and off court, we've seen it a little bit, obviously, with Osaka. Trying to find this whole balance really, really tough. So we just watch with great interest now and see if she can, you know, back up what she's done in New York the last couple of weeks.
Well, Brett, I never thought I'd bring up Justin Bieber in tennis, but I mean, you mentioned there about being a teenager and just being able to enjoy that experience. If there's one person we look to who's sort of had struggles in that department, it was Justin. Obviously found when he was very young, 13 or 14 years of age, and then went through the limelight, and we realistically saw a huge deterioration in his mental state at certain times, just with the pressure he was under. So I think you're right, getting a team around her and preventing sort of those, you know, overloading of opportunities, or whether it be, as you mentioned, the target on the back, really, really important.
Yeah, No doubt. I think this will be a fascinating watch, this space. And, mental health in sport, whether it's tennis, other sports, we know it's there. And the tennis players have been living in extraordinary circumstances, really. They're not complaining because they've been able to actually do things and still have a living, like a lot of people in life haven't been able to do. But they have been living in these bubbles, which vary from country to country to country, and it'll vary again when they come down to Australia. All that to be sorted out in time. It's an interesting bubble that they're in, tennis players, and it's not for everyone, and some can sustain it longer. Emma's, she's really at the infancy of her career. I mean, she's a baby, 18. So there's lots of twists and turns. There'll be ups, downs to come. It's hard to forecast from here, but she did play exceptionally good tennis. So that's what will do the talking. If the tennis does the talking, the rest will take care of itself.
Well said. Let's now turn our attention, though, to the men's side of the draw. Absolute heartbreak for Novak Djokovic. We saw tears on the court. There were boos ringing out around us, New York as well. So some pretty crazy scenes there. But much like the women's draw, we have yet another new Grand Slam champion.
Yeah, we do. And at the end of the day, he deserved it. Daniil Medvedev, he played a superb final strategically. He ticked all the boxes and he had a great fortnight. So he was always on track on his side of the draw to make the final. There was no doubt, but could he take down Novak? And when he broke in the first game of the match, you thought, okay, ominous signs. Djokovic has lost the first set, so no one was panicking. He breaks back early in the second, and you're thinking, okay, status quo, will get things back on track. But Medvedev stuck to his guns. I mean, he served beautifully, returned beautifully. He's almost a carbon copy of Novak in the way he plays, a similar style, to dominate from the baseline. So he's been building for 3 or 4 years. He's broken through ahead of Zverev and Tsitsipas and Berrettini. And I think there'll be more for Medvedev, particularly on hard courts. That's where he really does excel. And I think now it'll say to the others, and Zverev was so close to beating Djokovic. Well, he had a chance, taking him to 5 in a semi-final, that I think the belief will sort of resonate through that next generation that we can get Novak now. He's going to be another year older next year. He's going to be turning 35. He's now maybe more gettable than what he has been in the past. So I think that makes for a great time in men's tennis, the clash of the generations.
Medvedev's still pretty young too. He's only 25. One player you didn't mention just then in some of this upcoming talent was Dominic Thiem. Do you think he's fallen off a little bit, or can he still be one to challenge?
Yeah, well, it's just been an extraordinary period. I mean, since he won the US Open 12 months ago, he then really struggled in the whole bubble. I mean, he was flat out here in Australia in February, just did not hit his straps. And then I think he suffered his own battles, just really struggling with that whole bubble set up around him. So his form dipped. And then, of course, he had the injury in the middle part of the year. So he's been derailed with injury as well. So combination, it just hasn't been his year. But if he can get back, well, I mean, he's a fine player. And he's a little bit older at 27, 28 next year. And, we've missed him really, because he put together an extraordinary 2 or 3 year period, building himself into the top 4 in the world on hard work. I always said to people that if our young Australian players could go and spend a fortnight with Dominic Thiem, I reckon they'd walk away, just better people and better players in terms of all the little bits of preparation that you need to be the best. So I don't think he's fallen off totally, but things have changed in the last 12 months. So he's got to regain his status again and see where he sort of sits in the pecking order. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, it's going to have to come down to more hard work. And Brett, just before I let you go, what's the next step here for our major players? What are they now focusing on with the US Open done and dusted?
So Indian Wells is the big Masters event. Now, that has normally been in March. It's a beautiful event. Lucky to have been there a couple of times in the Californian desert. Twice it got cancelled the last 2 years. So they've rescheduled it to October, very different time zone. I think it'll be a little hotter from my understanding. And yeah, that's where we'll see certainly our seeded players. Well, Barty will play there. Our top men, Demonor will play. Thompson, Millman, if he's fit, would play in Indian Wells. And then we've got certainly the WTA finals, the ATP finals. Reports this week that Ash Barty looks like she's going to try and get home. They've moved the WTA finals to Mexico, high altitude. Craig Tyser, her coach, was pretty disgusted about that change this week, but they want to retain it. $6 million in prize money. Not that Ash is worried about the cash. She wants to get home to actually see some family and have a bit of normality. It's been a long year on the road. So we've got a few bits and pieces to go. Some of our Australians will stay away longer than others. I noticed Storm Sanders has already come back quarantining in Melbourne. She's said her season is done. Others will try and play as much tennis as possible and get back here, November, December, and then quarantine and hopefully get ready for Australia. And we should learn more on that, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks as to what the Australian summer is going to look like.
Brilliant. As always, Brett, you're across it all. Thanks so much for joining us on Game On.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Such an incredible rise of Emma Raducanu, a very bright future in store for the 18-year-old. Time now for a final break before we wrap up the show by taking a look at the finances off the field with Sports Business. Has your week hit you for six? Barely had time to breathe, let alone throw a flick pass? Well, don't worry, 𝐊𝐴 has all your sporting action covered. Each episode, I'll bring you the biggest sports news of the week. Exclusive interviews with athletes, sports commentators and journalists. Plus, we'll also look at the finances off the field from new broadcast deals, sports commercial partnerships and more with Sports Business. So for a sports show that tackles all the big issues, ball and all, join me, James Preston, for Game On every Friday, exclusive to 𝐊𝐴 TV. Thanks for tuning in to 𝐊𝐴 TV. This is Game On, your weekly sports wrap, and it's now time to turn our attention to the finances off the field with Sports Business. Australia's Nine Network has penned a 3-year broadcast rights deal for the US Open Tennis Grand Slam. The exclusive agreement, which commences from 2022, will see matches made available in Australia on commercial broadcaster Channel 9 and also the Stan Sport subscription streaming service. Nine has now locked in coverage of all 4 of tennis's Grand Slam events, having already bought the rights to the Australian Open, French Open and also Wimbledon. On Wednesday, Kevin Mayer, the chairman of sports streamer 𝐷AZN, attended the Royal Television Society's 2021 convention in Cambridge in the UK. As part of the convention, Mayer made clear the intention for 𝐷AZN to attempt and to secure the rights to the English Premier League the next time the bid is on the table. At the convention, Mayer stated, "We're not trying to stir the pot, we're just trying to get the rights that matter. I would love to see the Premier League on 𝐷AZN in the future. It's a huge market, incredibly popular sport, high quality experience. Of course, we'd want that." Now, 𝐷AZN wasn't invited to the bidding table during the latest round of Premier League UK broadcast rights talks, with Sky Sports, BT Sport, Amazon Prime Video and also BBC Sport agreeing a 3-year extension to their current agreement that will run all the way through until 2025. And lastly, Indian cricket captain Virat Kohli has agreed to a deal to become an investor and brand ambassador for athlete recovery technology brand Hyperice. Kohli was specifically targeted by Hyperice as it begins its expansion in India. He joins the likes of football superstar Erling Haaland, 4-time tennis Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka, Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes, NBA star Ja Morant and also PGA Tour champion Ricky Fowler as athletes who have already aligned with Hyperice. Well, that's all for this edition of Game On. Hope you enjoyed the show. I'll catch you next Friday. Until then, make sure to get out there and kick a goal.